Today we will David, it's engineer from Rapid7, will present and explain their new solution, Surface Command. And the most interesting thing that this solution will be part of new main product like Exposure Command, which will contain Surface Command inside VM, inside AppSec, and also inside CloudSec. But every else product we already know, we presented into market, but Surface Command it's new, so I think it will be interesting for everybody to understand what is this and how it works.
Yeah, Dima, absolutely. And also I would like to add that Rapid7 is now moving towards, let's say, two main offerings. One is what Dima said, Exposure Command, and one is the managed services. Now, the managed services is not the scope of today, but it's important, guys, for all of you that are working with Rapid7 with inside VM rather than Expos, inside AppSec sometimes. The Exposure Command bundle is what we are gonna push and where Rapid7 is investing more. In what sense? All this bundle is gonna help customers getting more visibility into their network. So it's not just reacting to the single vulnerabilities that you may find with the inside VM or inside AppSec, but it's also helping in terms of having full visibility for cloud environment for those who are adopting cloud. Someone is adopting cloud already also in our region, Softprom region. So inside CloudSec can come as a benefit, but also with Surface Command, with David that was going to show the solution, you will get full visibility also in terms of some misconfiguration, for example, on your assets. And moving forward, we are seeing that the market is asking more and more about solution like this one, attack surface management. To give you some, let's say, kind of sales insights, our main competitors, you all know, is Qualys and Tenable. Qualys is doing external attack surface management, but not internal. Tenable is about to acquire for quite a few million another company to improve their attack surface management, which is again mainly external. And then you have other player like Axionius, which is a really expensive solution, and most probably the company are not looking at the moment in that kind of solution because it's still new. So we are coming. I think Rapid7 is coming in the right time in terms of getting some market share for attack surface management. Again, we are looking externally and internally, and this solution is going to provide lots of good tools in terms of starting to understanding your own network. David, I don't know if you want to add something rather than if you want to start. On a separate session, we can always discuss the commercial together with Dimitro, but it's a solution that's going to definitely help the customer.
Yeah, certainly we can go through the licensing towards the end of the session.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall I take it from here?
Oh, yes.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is David Higgs. I am the Senior Security Solution Engineer for the channel. Previously, I was supporting the Eastern Europe region. Now I'm supporting EMEA as a whole. So yeah, let's get down to our demo today. Share my screen. So what is Exposure Command? What is Surface Command? What is attack surface management? So the problem our industry is facing at the moment is that organizations are unable to identify the majority of their inventory. They're effectively blind to a lot of the assets within their environment. And what this means is this causes unknown risk. Now, it's great if you're able to see a risk and accept it. You know about that risk, that's fine. But what we're trying to surface is the unknown risk in your environment. More than 80% of organizations do not understand their attack surface because of this unknown risk. So what we're aiming to do with Surface Command is take that increasing attack surface and the decreasing visibility of that attack surface and bridge the visibility gap here. So this is the gap here that we are aiming to solve. So what Surface Command and Exposure Command does is it essentially takes data from lots of different sources and correlates that across the product. So we see here our initial focus used to be around endpoints and servers. It then expanded to identities, VMs, and the network. And then in recent years, we've had the cloud, bring your own device, AI, machine learning, web domains. And now we're also going one step further to include things like the supply chain, APIs, containerization, SaaS platforms, and IoT. And the problem for security teams is that they need to keep on top of all of this, because even with the likes of DeepSeek recently, there's lots of end users who want to use it, who are looking at it. Now, this could present a risk to the organization if they don't know who is using it and what information they are sending to this application. So it's harder for IT staff and for security staff to keep control of the attack surface. Organizations also lack visibility across the environment as well. What we're doing with Surface Command is we're looking to correlate these data sources together to provide lots more context. I see we've got a question on the chat. Oh, that's just Alessandro. Okay, perfect. So in this instance, we would correlate the assets across all these different log sources, or information sources, should I say, deduce that down to threats, vulnerabilities, and controls to then find our true attack surface. Okay, so I think we'll jump into the platform in a second after we just talk about the architecture for one moment. So we essentially take all of these, what we would call signals. So these are information sources across your environment, and we would correlate servers and endpoints, systems, cloud, network, SaaS applications, identity, etc. across the environment using Surface Command. And that allows us to then prioritize based on all of this criteria you see over here on the right-hand side. There's lots of tooling that comes under the wider banner of Surface Command. So you might see acronyms mentioned like Asset Inventory, EASM, that stands for External Attack Surface Management. This is good, but it's limited to just the external side. So this will give you exactly what an attacker sees, but it won't give you potentially all of the next steps. We then have chasm tools. This is around asset management and primarily focused on internal assets. We then have RBVM, which looks to incorporate data from CSPM and vulnerability scanners. And Rapid7 Surface Command encompasses all of these four categories within the product. Just to show you a bit more about the architecture, we have here all of our information sources across the bottom. And it's also worth saying that we are agnostic. So yes, you can use Surface Command with Insight VM, and we certainly hope you do. However, if there is a customer who has Tenable or Qualys, we can also connect those as information sources. So don't let that be a barrier to a potential sale. If the customer has Qualys, that's absolutely fine. Connect it as a data source, and we can bring that information into the product. Okay, shall we show you some of the platform? Does anyone have any questions before we move on?
Monitoring the Q&A session, or if someone is raising hands, seems no so far.
I have a question, sorry. In previous slide, you put that asset inventory. It's very popular question from our customers. Does Rapid7 have asset inventory? Previously, we always answer it no. We can't do it with inside VMs this, but now I think we can say yes. We have asset inventory in Surface Command.
Absolutely, yes. So we would take the asset inventory from several different data sources. And if your customer has a CMDB like ServiceNow or other asset management tools, we can bring that data in. And the reason being is that we often find that there are disagreements between the security team and the IT operations. IT operations say the CMDB is the best source of truth, whereas security team would say that the vulnerability management is the most accurate source of truth. We would say actually it's both, and for different things. So for instance, you would say that there's certain business operational information that's contained within the CMDB that is more accurate than what is in the vulnerability scanner because it's just simply not populated in there. But from the vulnerability scanner, we might have a more up-to-date IP address or MAC address or FQDN. This would be more up-to-date potentially than the CMDB. And so what we do in Surface Command is we actually marry those pieces of data together. And we can say, okay, what is the best source of truth for each piece of information? So it gives you a really accurate picture of your environment. Okay, so in fact, before I move on to this, I actually want to share with you a piece of information, and that is, here we go. So this was actually from the Rapid7 Threat Intelligence Report at the beginning of 2024. And we showed, and this really closely aligned with the Verizon DBIR report as well. So really kind of industry leading reports on what threat actors are using to gain access to organizations. So initial access vectors, and this made up just over 80%. So it's 83% of all initial access was down to these three things. It was misconfigured multi-factor, vulnerability exploitation, and social engineering. Now we can see here that that multi-factor, or rather no multi-factor, was responsible for 41% of incidents. And this was in the year 2023. We published the report in 2024. Now, we've just had the stats released for the 2024 report, and this has actually gone up to 56% of all initial access is actually down to lack or no enforcement of multi-factor. And so what you'll see here with Surface Command, when I move into the tool in a moment, is that we are actually showing you multi-factor deployment across your organization. We are showing you the assets that have vulnerabilities assessed and the ones that haven't been assessed at all. We are also showing you assets that have endpoint security in place and the ones that do not. And so this really allows you to quickly bridge the gap in your visibility in your environment. And if you just focused on these three things only, this would cover the 80% that causes all initial access. So it's a very, very powerful tool. We can see here, we've got those 3 items. Now, let's dive into identities with multi-factor enabled.
I would like to add also, guys, that since CrowdStrike is quite present in the region, the multi-factor authentication with CrowdStrike is something that you can see from Surface Command if it has been enabled or not. So this is something really important that you can combine with the other solution that you're selling.
So here we can see that the filter has been pre-configured, multi-factor excludes true. And so these are all the users without multi-factor enabled. And we can scroll through the list and we can go and action this. Now, what I can also do here is we can start to build up other filters. So maybe I want to know which ones are administrators, and I could select only true, and this would pull back the administrators who do not have multi-factor enabled. Now, let's dive into this one here. And what I'm going to do is expand. We can see here that we are pulling information from AWS, from Slack, from KnowBe4, Google Workspace, and Active Directory. We are then normalizing this information under the General tab here. So as I scroll down, we can see that this is an active user, that's true, and we are pulling that information from Slack, KnowBe4, Google Workspace, and AD. We then also have multi-factor is false. We can see where we are pulling that information from. Google Workspace and AWS both are false. And then we can also see administrator is true. And then again, if I hover over that, we can see Slack and Google Workspace. Now, just to show you, we are very transparent about the correlation within the environment. So we show you here the values that we've correlated against the identity that are linking it across these different data sources. And of course, I can dive into the additional properties here, as you see, and then have a look at the individual properties from AWS, from Slack, from KnowBe4, Google Workspace, and from Active Directory. Let's go back to the command platform. Next, we'll have a look at assets with vulnerabilities assessed. So just to give you a bit of information about the back end of the platform, what we have in our SaaS platform is essentially a data mesh that we then pull in lots of data from our own products. So this will be Insight VM, Insight IDR, Insight CloudSec, Insight AppSec, and I think I'm probably forgetting a few others, along with all of the other platforms as well that we have connectors for. Now, if you want to see a full list of connectors, and the reason this is taking so long is because we have a large database in our demo environment. And the reason we have that is to be able to show customers lots of different data sources so they understand, okay, I can connect the data sources that I have. Now, if we go to the extensions page, and you can look at this yourself, so I'm just going to paste this into the chat here. and I'll send that to everyone. Extensions.rapid7.com. And if I go to Surface Command, we can see we now have 134 extensions. Now it's just going to load that content here. See some of the recently updated. So we've updated all of these very recently. Sentinel-1, Red Hat, Orca, Trend, Tenable are in there as well. Just scrolling through, you can see all of the connectors that we have. In total, 134. So please do have a look at that list, see the ones that you have in your environment. Now here we have come back to our results. You can see here that we have approximately 38,000 entries in the database. And then the filters that we're looking at are workstation and server. You can see that we also have asset classes for lots of other types. So IoT, mobile, network, camera, hypervisors, etc. And then does not contain vulnerability scanning. And then here we can see all of the results that have not been picked up by the vulnerability scanner itself. Now here we can see that Sentinel-1 Ranger has picked up the asset. So in this instance, what we would want to do is review the asset IP address ranges. Maybe there's a subnet in this example that we've not configured in the vulnerability scanner. Or maybe there's some firewall rules that are preventing us from scanning that subnet. We can then go out and action that accordingly. And then we look here, the other filters that we can look at. So maybe we might want to see if endpoint protection is active. And we want to look at ones that are either false or null. So we'll exclude true. So this is no vulnerability scanning and no endpoint protection in place. So it might take a few minutes to come back with the results. But here we can see those results here. And we got Sentinel-1 Ranger has thankfully picked a lot of those up, which is good. Let's go back to the command platform again. And then we'll focus on the assets with endpoint security. So whilst it's bringing that data back again, just to add, we do have a much more detailed query language called Cypher queries. So if you are skilled with regex, then you will be able to run some more complex queries as well within the environment. But for the most part, our queries from the GUI work for the majority of customers. So in this instance, we've got workstations and servers without endpoint protection. And we can see here the results. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually also filter by sources. So we could have a look at the source information. There we go. And I can sort by what is not covered. So I could find the source. Let's say we wanted to look at CrowdStrike, and we could see what is not covered by CrowdStrike. I could also sort the opposite way. So I could actually filter by source, and then I want to show you ServiceNow. So this is our CMDB. It's going to pull back results on that. And now I'm going to show you correlation capabilities across the log sources, data sources for assets. So in this instance, we have in the general tab, and again, I'm going to scroll down and show you that correlation information. So we can see we've correlated the MAC address across managed device on Intune, across Inside VM and ServiceNow. We've also correlated the machine qualified hostname from Active Directory, from Defender, and from the vulnerability scanner. And then we've correlated the machine unqualified hostname across Active Directory, Exabeam, Intune, and the vulnerability scanner as well. If we scroll across, we see that all important information from ServiceNow. So those important asset tag capabilities, asset owner details as well. Within Inside VM, we get much more detailed information about the asset itself. So architecture, OS family, OS product, version, a lot more detail here. We can dive into the system properties further as well. From Intune, we get lots of detail you can see here. Microsoft Defender, see the health status of Defender as well, is active. And if we dive into those additional properties, we should also be able to see the reason as to why this has been flagged as the EDR. Okay, status is active. Let's have a quick look. Just double check my filters. Workstation, endpoint protection is active. That excludes true. There we go. Endpoint protection is active, and we can see that is false. And then we are pulling that information from Defender. Property protection enabled is false. So again, if we go to Defender, should be able to see that we got the Defender AV status, but there's an additional property somewhere here that I'm looking for. Protection enabled, that's the one, and we can see that is false. So that's the reason that that has been correlated within those filters that you've just seen, because the agent itself is active, but actually protection is not enabled. We can then see in Exabeam the details here, and then of course in Microsoft Active Directory as well. So let's go back to the home page, back to the platform. So before we take a deeper dive into some more on Surface Command, I want to finish the tour on the home page first. So we have covered assets and identities with these sections here. I'm now going to go into the external attack surface. So in this instance, we have the ability to add seeds. So what we mean by seeds is IP addresses and FQDNs. To do that, I would add a seed here. I would type my domain or my IP address, and then it would appear in our seeds. What then the platform does in the background is we're going to do DNS lookups on the domains for the IP addresses, And then we're going to do reverse lookups on the IP addresses for any additional domains. And so what we will end up with is a list of IPs and domains that you've given us already, but also ones that we've discovered that you haven't given us. And so we would go into one of these here, and we can see that this status is not reviewed. And then I can change that status to, we can accept that as an asset. We can reject it. We can say it's not reviewed, or we can say it belongs to a SaaS platform. From there, we will then go off and then discover network services and security certificates against those assets. So in this instance, we are looking at critical severity. In fact, let's just clear all. And so what we can now do is look at the network services and certificates. I want to focus on critical, and then we're looking at certificates and services. Now, if I want, I can get rid of this filter. So we're only focusing on services and critical. And then let's click on one of these. Now, how we are getting this information is Rapid7 has its own internet scanner. Essentially, what we do is called Project Sonar. We scan the internet every 24 hours for open services. So in this instance, we can see that OpenSSH is running. And then we are enriching this with information from, again, Project Sonar, but also the Showdown project as well, to give you all of the CVEs that you see here. We can also show you related services. So we are looking at the same port number. You can see here, port 22, across those different IP ranges that we have populated as seeds. If I go back to our discoveries, and we focus on certificates. I can see here, looking into one of these security certificates, the severity level. Reason is that the certificate has expired, and we can see the discovery information, the fingerprint as well, and the expiry date. This is really handy for customers to get visibility of their external attack surface. Next, I'm going to go into the workplace.
Any questions so far? Is all clear? So.
Okay, I'm just going to get rid of some of these queries that I've run previously, just to clean this up. And let's create a new one.
Sorry, can I ask a question, David, Alessandro? About, I want to understand what this product does by themselves and what part it's just correlated information from other products. So just it's not a secret that in our region, clients often don't have a lot of this solution, what you are talking about, like Wiz, like if they have Active Directory, we are happy. Yes, they even can have don't have sometimes vulnerability management. So I want to try to understand what it products can bring to these customers who have a little amount of resources and sources, yes, of data, and what they can, and if customer already have a lot of sources, we understand they can correlate all the information in this surface management. But if we talk about customer, let's say with nothing, with minimum amount of instrument, like they have Active Directory and they happy about it.
For that type of customer, this tool isn't the tool for them. And the reason for that is on its own, without any data to work with, it doesn't do anything. So it essentially relies on the data from all of these sources to then make correlations, to derive intelligence from. So that in that instance, we would probably then lean into the exposure command bundle, which you would get Insight VM and also Surface Command with. And then that would essentially allow you to plug in to the environment with your vulnerability scanner, with Active Directory, with your EDR tool as well, for example. But I would say you are looking at a customer in terms of size. You need to have a a good enough size where there's going to be assets that they don't know about, for example, or that they're finding it hard to manage. If you're looking at a company with 100 people, it's probably not the right fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Why I'm asking, because in our region, let's say government customers just start focusing on security, and sometimes they have implement some solution like Active Directory, okay, but now we understand they trying to move in the cloud with very, let's say, minimum amount of people using it. For example, customer can have 5,000 people, but cloud using, let's say, 300 of them or something like this. And I understand that we can propose them not clear surface management, but propose them, for example, exposure command, whereas surface management is one of a part of it. Yes. And for these customers, what exactly they will have, for example, visibility in cloud? Do they need to have this Viz, to have any other solution that working in cloud or not?
Okay, so if you go for the exposure management bundle, that includes Insight CloudSec. So they will then be able to, so Insight CloudSec is an equivalent to Wiz. They will then be able to see their assets from Insight CloudSec, the misconfigurations, the vulnerabilities within their cloud environment. We will also connect directly into the cloud environment as well. So whether that is Azure, GCP, AWS, we will then connect in that environment as a data source and pull telemetry. And so that gives us full visibility across the environment. So yeah, that's quite a good use case, especially as when people are doing cloud migrations. We all know what happens. You have a project with a fixed scope, a fixed budget. What happens during a project? Scope creep. So the scope expands, the budget remains the same. People are trying to do too much with not enough time, and then security is always an afterthought. So Insight CloudSec in that instance helps you come in and do the mop up afterwards. So yeah, the exposure command bundle is really good for that because it includes Insight CloudSec as well as Insight VM and also Surface Command.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so let's do some cool stuff with the query language now. I'm going to focus on an identity. And what we can do here is we can start to query the data. So I can select several properties, and I'm going to go across all data sources. Now let's go with, okay, we want this to be an active asset. Yes, that's true. We also want this to be an administrator. True. And then we also want to look at multi-factor is false. And then I'm going to add some additional information here from, let's go with know before. So for those of you who don't know who know before are, they are a phishing simulator. So you can test your employees on how good they are against phishing emails. So the piece of information I want to know is the identity prone to phishes? And then we will say is greater than 50%. So half of the time, half of the phishing emails that they have received, they've clicked on. This is not a good situation. We run that query, and then we get back, we can see here 4 users that fit that criteria. So we can look at these users here, can expand that, and then we can see across those different data sources. If I go into the know before information, we can see that this person's clicks on a lot of phishing emails. And so in this instance, you would want to say, well, 1, we need to enable multi-factor, and 2, you're not going to be an administrator anymore. And so that allows you to build up more contextual layers of information on top of each other so that you can make more effective decisions to safeguard the security of the environment. This is true defense in depth that you get with this product. Now let's go into a bit more detail on the query itself. So I'm going back into the query here. In this instance, I needed all of these to match. We also have the ability to do any, and then we also have the ability to do an advanced query. So I could say, in this instance, we could add a condition that says, 1 and 2, 4, 3, and 4. And this would group these 2 and these 2. And then, of course, I could switch the ands and the ors around to express this differently. But in this instance, we want all of these to match and be applied. We also have the advanced query we can see here. So if you want to go deep into our Cypher query, then absolutely you can. You can edit in Cypher mode. This is where you can start to use regex within the platform as well to create some more complex queries. Let's show you some other queries that are a bit more complex. So I'm going to have a look at a dashboard I've made previously. So these dashboards here, we can, these are entirely customizable. So how we would do that is we would create some widgets and then add them to dashboards. And I will show you that in a moment. So in this instance, let's go to a dashboard I've made previously, which is in a different platform. Yep, it's in my other demo environment. Okay, we're going to go through creating a dashboard widget. So let's go back to the workplace. We've got our query here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it. Softprom webinar. There we go. And what I can do here is we can favorite it. And then I'm going to say we're going to create widgets as well. Now you can see here that this is live, so we are crunching through the data as we are live on the webinar right now. So there's no smoke and mirrors, no tricks that we're using. This is the real platform with real data. As I say, there is over 40,000 database entries in the back end within our data mesh. Does anyone have any questions while we are waiting for the platform to create the widgets? Okay, so whilst we're waiting for that, let's talk more about the architecture.
David, I really have one question. Softprom is quite strong with, for example, with Imperva. Now we don't have any connection with the Imperva in the extension library, but how would you keep track of the applications that you are protecting with Imperva with the web application firewall, for example? We use also inside AppSec inside Surface Command. So I'm wondering if we have they may have a customer a way to keep track of the applications as well.
Yeah. So quite an interesting thing we could do, and by the way, we are creating new connectors all the time. So it's certainly worth submitting a request for Imperva to be added as a connector, because yes, what we would want to look at in that instance would be, okay, we have the external attack surface assets. At that point, so FQDNs and IP addresses. At that point, what we would want to do is make sure that Imperva also had those assets, because we know that marketing are crazy guys, and they spin up new IP new domains all the time. It may be to a campaign that's not actually monitored by the web application firewall, and so yeah, we would want to know, okay, we have an external attack surface discovered by Surface Command. does that actually link to Imperva? So there's definitely a use case there, and I would suggest that, if we have the right customer and the customer is interested in the platform itself, they're looking to make a purchase, then absolutely we are going to submit a business case to create a connector for Imperva. So that's what I would say in that instance. Equally, we can import manual CSVs as well from different data sources. So again, if you wanted to create a CSV from Imperva that essentially gave us a list of FQDNs that were covered, then we could potentially correlate information that way instead. So now what I'm going to do is, hopefully that answers your question, by the way.
I think so.
Perfect. So we're going to create a widget. So in this instance, we have a count of 4. And what we can actually do, we can show you, okay, measures count, but we've got some other measurements that we could use in this example. The other thing we can do is add some conditional formatting. So in this instance, I'm going to use number, and then we will say, okay, if it goes over 3, then we want to introduce, we want to introduce some conditional formatting so that if it is greater than 3, then the color is going to change to red. So this is like a nice warning system that you can start to introduce into your dashboards. So I'm going to save that. What I'm going to do is we're going to create another widget. And in this instance, we're going to look at a trend line. So we're going to see how this fares over a daily period over a period of 30 days. And we can play with the dimensions as well. And we can also filter results out. I want to change the color to orange as well, and we're going to hit save. Now we've started this today, and so we will get data from today onwards. Next, let's create another widget. So I'm going to, let's go through some of the others. So we've got a trend bar. This maybe isn't a very good example for this type of widget. We've got line, bar graphs, horizontal bar graphs, a table. So very basic. Correlation. So what this is doing is this is looking across the different data sources and how they correlate between each other. So I'm going to add this one. 3. And then let's just show you the final one. So we've done the correlation. Here we also have the Venn diagram, so we can see data sources overlapping each other. So if I wanted to show you how AWS, Google, and KnowBe4 overlap, or maybe Active Directory with those other two. We could show you the overlap there. It's very similar to the correlation source, but you can obviously limit it down to particular sources. We then have the donut. I really like this one because it gives you a total in the middle and then could actually show you a breakdown based on different data as well. The pie serves a similar function. And then you've also got the area as well. Okay, so I've got 3 widgets here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save. And then we're going to go and create a dashboard. So that's been updated. Let's go to our dashboards. We've got our other dashboards in here. If I wanted to, I could add to an existing dashboard. What I'm going to do is we're going to create a new dashboard here. And we can add a description. And then we can start adding widgets. If I search for Softprom, it will take a few seconds to pull this back. But once it does, we'll then be able to add our widgets in. So what the platform is doing in the background is it is querying the data mesh. It's also looking up the widgets that we created, along with all of the other widgets that everyone else has created in the platform as well. So you can see here, as we scroll down, all of those widgets that have been created. Now, I'm just going to hit a search and we'll see the results for Softprom come back, those 3 widgets I created earlier. Okay, perfect. Here we go. Soft. It'll just take a few moments to bring these widgets back. And in fact, what I could do is, now that I've created this dashboard, we could actually go in and do it the opposite way as well. So we could actually go into our saved queries, go into the widgets themselves, and then add them to this dashboard. I think I'm going to, oh, there we go. So we've got that. There we go. And it will just take a few moments to populate that data. Just to add, this is our demo platform. So there's lots of people across Europe using it right now, querying the data in the back end, which is maybe why we're seeing a little bit of lag. So you can see here we've got delete as we wish, and then we can also save that. And there we go. We have our dashboard, which is now populated. Let's have a look through some of the other dashboards that have been created previously. So we have the key control indicator. This is on our asset inventory. We can see active workstations without EDR. Hopefully you don't have this number in real life because this is crazy high. We also have other things like wireless access points not in policy, privileged accounts, surfacing information here. So as you've seen, we can create dashboards that are highly customizable. So these are great for all the way up to CISO level and all the way down to analyst level, depending on what information that you want to see back from the platform itself. Log collection. Let's have a look at some other pieces of information. So maybe we want to have a look at coverage gaps. We can see key coverage gaps. And by the way, these are completely customizable. We've created these. So coverage control for on-prem servers, we can see Defender, we can see Intune, we can see Sentinel-1, and the level of compliance against that. So this kind of information is great for a CISO, great for the execs to see the level of compliance against the target and whether you have passed or failed. Control coverage on workstations. See our target and our percentage covered. You can see version distribution, server coverage and support. So lots of capabilities here. Okay, so let's go into the connectors now. So if we wanted to add a new connector, we would go to our connectors page here. We can click add a new connector, and this will take us off to the extensions page of rapid7.com, where we can then look through our connectors list. We can see which ones are installed and which ones are not installed. So if I wanted to add, for instance, Microsoft Graph Security, we can click into this extension. And then you see up here, we have the option to install it. Now, I'm not going to click that and install it on our demo platform whilst I'm doing a webinar. But once it has been installed, you will see it in the list of connectors within the platform itself. Once it loads, I'm just going to go and change my demo environment just because this isn't being very responsive at the moment. Ale, would you be able to take over for just like a minute or two?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Dima, do you think that everything is clear, or maybe there are some questions? You guys have any question? You want to raise hand and ask while David is changing the demo environment?
I think that everything is clear
Okay.
if there is no question, or
Okay.
nothing is clear, and
But
so
better
such
to ask.
there is no question.
Yeah, can be the case, of course, can be the case. Also, guys, since we are now in this kind of a little break, David said that he moved to more an EMEA role. He's always supportive, but also there's Tony that we didn't introduce at the beginning. He is the engineer replacing David in the region, so he can always help. So if you have any question, any kind of topic that you want to discuss, you can always reach out to me, Dima, Tony, or David as well. So there are plenty of resources here to support you guys. If you want us to jump on a demo on a POC, let us know. I know
By
that
the way, yes, but by the way, it's very important question. How we can make a POC for it? Because as I understand, it's more than it's cloud solution. Yes, it's not like inside VM. You give us trial key and we test it on our own infrastructure. What is process for testing this?
well, I will play here a little bit the devil's advocate. As you said before, this solution standalone probably is not going to help unless you have something to connect. And if the majority of customers they stop at the Active Directory, I don't see the point for a trial rather than an NFR license. What we can do, we can give access to this demo environment so you can see and show the capabilities to the customer. If the customer is with some, let's say, interesting technology stack that we can connect, in that case, David or Tony will set up a POC license for the customer. I see Roman put an interesting, let's say, hint in the chat. I'm sure there will be much more questions after using a trial. The trial itself, Roma, in your case, I don't know if you with Alesta have multiple technologies and resources that you can put in. In the case, we can work on giving you an NFR license. Otherwise, if you don't have many technologies or many things to add, you can always set up a POC license, or give you access to the demo environment. But sure, I'm sure there will be more questions after using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to go over to one of the slides I've got. So this kind of feeds into the what's important to have in the solution. So we need to think of what are the connectors that we want to get into the environment, because as we say, the solution alone doesn't do anything. We need data coming in. And quality of data is important as well. Ideal connectors to have in the first instance are things like your EDR, your vulnerability scanner, your CMDB, Active Directory, any cloud environments, any environments where identities are detailed as well. In the first instance, I would always say to go to the extensions page and just look to see what platforms the customer has and what we can connect into the platform. When I've been speaking to other partners, sometimes people say, oh yeah, we need NFR. But the response to that is to say, well, okay, what are you going to connect it to? Well, we connect it to our lab. What data has your lab got in it? It's got 3 users. We use it for testing. this will not work. To actually get a decent use out of the product, you need it connecting to a real working environment. Otherwise, the data quality in the environment is just not going to support a good POC. And so what we frequently find is the few partners that have had access to an NFR environment have actually installed it within production, just so that they can actually see the platform working in a real life example. Now, to support our customer base, sorry, our partner customer base, what we do provide is access to a demo environment. So you will get access to the Rapid7 demo environment, where you will be able to search through the platform with data already in there. So you'll be able to do customer demos with data that's already available in the platform. What I would say is that we would also recommend you go to the partner portal, and I'm just going to log in there now. And within here, we have our partner academy. I start my journey, that then takes me off to our training platform, and we have lots of courses in here now. So if I go to the course library, what we would recommend that you do is we have our Rapid7 Technical Sales Professional, so that's RTSP for Surface Command. We've also got the Technical Sales Professional Foundation and the Sales Professional Foundation. So I would recommend for Surface Command, you do these two. And also the Insight VM course here and the Exposure Command course here. So there's 4 courses there that you can go off and do straight away, and you'll be able to get certified in those. I see there is 15 people here, 15 participants, which is great. So if we could get all 15 certified, that would be awesome. So next, yes, we provide you access to the demo environment. I'd recommend that you do pass these courses before you get access to the demo environment. Okay, so we were on to our connectors now at this point. We can see the ones that I've installed within the product. And then all I need to do here is, if I was to connect to a connector, we can see here the summary information. So all of the information that we are pulling. We can see the configuration. So if I was to expand this here, this is how we would set up the connector, so the authentication side of things. So we see there the configuration, release information as well. We can also see the types of information that we're pulling. Any queries specifically for the connector. Workflows attached to the connector. So if I was to select this specific one, this would take me off to the workflows section of the platform, where we can then import those feeds. So we can see here we've got a feed for Azure AD. Now the platform itself will harvest every 24 hours. However, if I wanted to, I could manually initiate that harvest. And then we've got functions within the environment as well. Now the connectors will connect to the environment directly, or in the instance that you have on-premise equipment that is not able for us to connect to publicly via the internet. What we do is we use the orchestrator. So that is the same orchestrator that we use for inside Connect. And then you can effectively deploy your connectors to the orchestrator and connect internally to the data source.
David, do we have a question?
Yep.
Right here on this page. Can you please show some of new generation firewall connectors and possible actions with them?
Yeah, so let's I don't know if we've got any connected in the demo environment, but let's have a look. Okay, let's have a look at the extensions page. This is more for endpoint management. I wonder if the use case for firewalls is. I'll have a think. Let's. Hello. Yeah, so we can see here that we're looking at products that are more focused on posture, rather than just particular, like you say, firewall rules. Let's have a.
Roman, do you want to tell us more about, I mean, what the reason for this question? What are you thinking? Do you want me to allow you to talk?
Hi guys.
Hey, Roman.
Hey, Roman.
I just wondered if Surface Command can be integrated like automation connection, like inside Connect. Maybe we have some for data enrichment from firewalls, like finding new assets or something else, and have some reactions to some issues found by firewall traffic. So I'm now surfing by extension rapid7.com and see that it's not available some NGFB plugins. So I just wondering if it's possible some case for integration with NGFB servers or something else.
I think a lot of that would already be covered by the SIEM platform. So we do sometimes get a bit of confusion between what Surface Command is and what Insight IDR does as well. So if you think of the Surface Command as like a SIEM but for posture, whereas Insight IDR is like live. It's live events coming in. We don't focus on that with Surface Command. It's purely, posture configuration related. So that would be like the difference between the two. When it comes to the firewall side of things, it doesn't seem that we've got connectors in for next gen firewalls, and I would say the reason is because the information that they're going to provide to us would be more on the lines of logs that a SIEM would ingest, rather than being able to actually interrogate their configuration. I will ask, certainly, but I think, the use case wise, maybe, I don't know, we could make some correlation between the external assets that we discover and the configuration of the firewall itself. But it's, certainly, in this instance, I don't think it will be available.
So am I understand correctly? So NGFB integration is more relevant to IDR and Connect, but it's not quite useful for command
Yeah.
solution.
Yes.
Mhm. And if we try to control our assets like remote VPN users, so it's more useful to connect data from multi-factor services and etc. Than from firewalls itself.
Yes. Yeah. So connecting those information sources that give us that info as to if a user has multi-factor enabled or not. Yes, absolutely, certainly. Rather than the logs themselves.
Great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
David, we have another question, the Q&A. Is
Yep.
the MSSP license available for partners for this solution?
We don't have a MSSP license as such at the moment. This is something that is being worked on in the background, but there's some RBAC stuff that needs to go on for the MSSP side of things.
But I guess the for MSSP would work fine if you just connect. I don't know, if you have to connect different Active Directories, it would be working fine.
So yeah, we did add the ability to add multiple connectors of the same connector, so you could add multiple Active Directory environments. In that instance, it would mean that all of the data would be under the same tenant, so you wouldn't really be able to give a single customer access because they would have access to every customer. But as an MSSP, that would probably work for you, and then you would have to kind of create your service around, the essentially exporting dashboards based on things like tags. I would say on the MSSP side to probably wait until we've actually got the RBAC stuff in place, because I wouldn't want you to make a decision now that we made a lot easier later on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a little bit on the connectors here. What I'm going to do is show you also the unified properties. So it's going to pop another tab. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change my screen share for a moment. So you can now see the Unified Properties Explorer. So if I select, for instance, an asset, we can see all of those properties against an asset. And earlier where I was talking about what information was useful from different sources, in this instance, I can go to, let's say, IP address. I select IP address, and in this instance, I can select what is the top priority source, or we can select what is the most recently updated value, and then we can order by what is the top priority. So in this instance, I can say that AWS is my top priority source, maybe Azure as well, Automox, and then way down the list would be like your CMDB. However, in the instance that you wanted, for instance, business owners, asset owners, for example, you might say that Active Directory or ServiceNow is the more authoritative source of information for that piece of information. And so we can really customize this down to a granular level so that Surface Command actually becomes your absolute source of truth, the most up-to-date source of truth when it comes to your asset inventory across your environment. Okay, let's go back to the original share. Okay, So we've gone through a lot of stuff. Let's go back to the command platform, because there's a few more areas that we need to go through. So what we are in the process of doing is creating a one platform experience for our customers. Now we have all of these solutions here on the left-hand side, but now what we're doing is we're grouping them under logical areas. So we have attack surface. This focuses on a lot of the surface command functionality. We have the risk side of things. So we have the executive risk view. This correlates data from Insight VM and Insight CloudSec. This view is great for C-level people. We can, of course, filter by last month and then add particular filters based on resource type, whether it's cloud or on-premise, platform type, severity, exploitability, etc. A part of the platform that we are developing significantly at the moment is the remediation hub. And what we're doing here is we are pulling in remediations for the cloud environment and for on-premise. And we're showing you here the risk score across the environment for this solution, the number of assets affected, the number of vulnerabilities associated. So in this instance, we can see we have a cumulative update for Windows 10. We can see across the environment the total risk, percentage increased in the last 30 days, vulnerabilities remediated, assets updated. So potential risk reduction when applying our top 25 remediations. This is quite significant. If I dive into this particular solution, we can then see impacted assets. It will just take a moment to populate. We can see various tag information, so sites, locations, owners, any custom tags as well. We get the asset name. We also get the remediation information and the recommended one as well. Lots of summary information there, along with the vulnerabilities detailed we can see here. And this will allow us to look across cloud and on-premise environments. We have the cloud posture section as well. So this will pivot off to Insight CloudSec and pull in information on our overall cloud posture within the environment. So we can see here based on certain what we would call toxic combinations. We can see public facing assets on business critical applications with critical CVs with an attack path as well. And we have two assets in this instance. So if I dive into Insight CloudSec, we can see here those assets. If I was to have a look at detail of that, we can see the Insight findings. We have all of the details there. We can see all of the vulnerabilities. See that there's publicly accessible. And also see the related resources if we wish, and then I can actually view the attack path. So if I was to click on that, we can then see the attack path here. You can see it's publicly available. There's a security group. This might be where we need to do the remediation. We can see the Insight findings. I can actually look at the information of that security group, and then we can view the ingress rules. And we can see here the port 22 is open on these IP addresses. What I could do if I wanted to is we could delete that, and that would close the security group. We also have a compliance section, so we can see agent-based compliance. And this would take us off to inside VM policies. Most importantly, our agent-based policies we can see here. And then we can then dive into those particular policies. We can see the rules. We can see the associated assets. So that's populated, and we can see any overrides that have been set up. There we go. There's all our assets. And then, of course, we can click there and export to CSV if we wanted to. We have the cloud compliance section, which takes us off to inside CloudSec, where we can look at the compliance across the environment. So let's say that, I don't know, GDPR was important to us, or maybe ISO 27001. We can then see across our cloud environment and apply that. We get an overall summary compliance over time, as we see here. And then we can dive into those critical insights into the compliance scorecard. And we can see here we've got access list exposing public, RDP to the public. And if I wanted to, I could actually dive into that further. Let's go back to the platform. The threat section here pulls in inside IDR data. So you can see here within our homepage, we are tracking things like top investigations by priority. This is pulling in information from inside IDR. We can also see time to assign and close investigations. Again, looks at security operations activity from inside IDR. On the left-hand side, we have our top remediations, which is coming from the risk section of the product in the remediation hub. And then we have the new and remediated vulnerabilities versus risk score as well. Again, from the risk side of the product. Now, if I wanted to, I could actually pivot into inside IDR, into all of the investigations to look at this further. And then, of course, I could dive into one of these investigations and view the alert details and evidence accordingly. So let's talk a little bit about how you would scope an attack surface management project. So let's go for this one. So in this instance, we are engaging our stakeholders. So are they C-level? Are they analyst level? What data do they want to see? When do they need to see that in order to make changes on the environment? We need to understand the use cases for the customer. It's no good just throwing lots of data into the platform and then handing over to the customer and say, away you go. What the customer is really going to get value out of is understanding those use cases. So the three scenarios that we went through at the very beginning, things like multi-factor, vulnerabilities assessed versus not assessed, and then endpoint protection deployed or not deployed. These are kind of the three big areas that are going to have the biggest impact on your customer's success. It's also worth adding that once you connect all these additional sources of data, for instance, like your EDR, Surface Command could discover that actually the EDR hasn't been deployed on, quite a few assets. So in that instance, once you've deployed Surface Command, you've then got a conversation with the customer to say, okay, you need some more EDR licenses. And this isn't even a Rapid7 product. So you can see Surface Command as like the glue that brings all of your other products together. So you would understand the use cases and criteria, identify those key data sources, make use of the extensions page. This is publicly available. So you can send this to your customer and say, have a look at the extensions library. Which of these pieces of software do you have internally? And then identify the connectors that we want to bring in. So some of the use cases by difficulty, this is quite handy for you starting out. Easy attack surface visibility. So the existing tooling, how well is it working right now? Where are your coverage gaps? Is your tooling correctly deployed across the whole infrastructure or only 60, 70, 80, 90% of the infrastructure? Dashboarding. You can start to create dashboards that allow the customer to track their posture over time so they can see if it's getting better or it's getting worse. What will help with this is if they can see that their posture is getting better, then that makes you look better as a partner. Migration. So we spoke about customers who have, let's say, an existing product with Tenable or Qualys. I had an example of a large supermarket chain in the UK. They have Qualys and they're looking to replace with Surface Command and Insight VM. Now, the issue with their environment is it's very highly segmented. And so the issue this presents with a vulnerability scanner is if we just take Qualys out and put Insight VM in, we have the issue of, okay, do we have the correct coverage with Insight VM? What Surface Command allows us to do is pull in the Qualys data, pull in the Insight VM data, and see where are the gaps. And then, of course, that allows us to do a slower migration, the lower risk, the customer's happier, that they can then disconnect Qualys in favor of Insight VM and be safe that in the knowledge that Insight VM is covering everything because they can see it in the Surface Command database. Licensing. How many unique assets do they have? What Surface Command will allow you to do is more accurately size an environment. And that's because we're connecting so many different data sources. So if you have Surface Command in place, and let's say you wanted to sell an EDR license, for example, you can get a full picture of how many assets they actually have that you could install an EDR on. So this allows you to more accurately scope a project. And then the classic example of a CMDB reconciliation. So operations say one thing, security says another. We can bring those data together so that everyone is right and everyone has the most accurate information possible. Next, we've got things like vulnerability and exposure prioritization. So we can leverage things like context. We can look at networking across the environment, look at things like business users and threat intelligence. We can prioritize based on asset impact and vulnerability exploitability. And then finally, looking at hard, which is risk scoring. We could then essentially create a more granular risk score. So I've actually had it in the past where one of our sales engineers has created a specific Cypher query that assigns a risk score based on, does the asset have an EDR installed? Does it have vulnerability management coverage? Are there any vulnerabilities on that asset? Are any of those vulnerabilities exploited in the wild? If it doesn't have EDR, but it has vulnerabilities exploited in the wild, then this is obviously going to have a higher risk score, and you can customize this completely, and it's very transparent when you do it this way. Connector scoping is important. So we would want to look at different asset types. So you want to look at vulnerability management, agents, CMDB. Active Directory is a really good source, along with any cloud providers. And then we can also look at things like posture data. So KnowBe4 is a really good source for that. But always, always, always make sure you check out the extensions page at rapid7.com. We also have a, within the partner portal, we will have the Surface Command project plan tracker, which allows you to create your business commercial requirements, POC stakeholders, timelines, and tasks. So it allows you to kind of structure an engagement with a customer. So what I will do now is, I think this is all the content that I wanted to cover on the session. I hope you found this useful, and I will take questions now.
David, I have one question about licensing. It's how client need to understand how many license of Surface Command do they need to buy?
Yeah, let me just get to sorry, one moment. I've got this. There we go. Okay, so we define an asset in Surface Command, and actually we're going through a bit of a restructure of how licensing is done right now. So it's about to become really, really simple. Currently, how we would license within the environment is the number of Insight VM assets plus the number of CloudSec assets plus the number of AppSec assets. So inside VM, you would define an asset as anything you wanted to do a vulnerability scan on. So this is workstations, servers, network devices. These would all be included. Next, with CloudSec, we would count things like compute instance. So that's a virtual machine, an EC2. Container clusters would be on a 1:2 ratio. So for every cluster, there would be 2 assets. And then serverless functions would be 50:1. So for every 50 serverless functions, that is 1 asset. And then applications are counted on a 1:1 ratio. So for every AppSec application that you want to scan, that would be 1 license. Now, it's important to note that we have 3 tiers. So we have Surface Command only, which will provide you asset discovery and external attack surface management. I would suggest that this isn't particularly useful in many use cases, only if the customer has a lot of other security tools to connect into. What I would say you should focus on as the minimum is Exposure Command, which includes everything in Surface Command plus on-premise cloud vulnerability management. So this is inside VM and inside CloudSec. It also includes posture management for cloud and on-premise. Active risk prioritization, we got the attack paths in there, executive risk view, remediation hub. It's not coming soon, that is now in place. We then also have the SOAR platform as well, so Inside Connect. The main difference with advanced is AppSec. So we see here at the bottom, if they want Inside AppSec, then they have to have the advanced. And then we also have things like the bot automation inside CloudSec, threat findings inside CloudSec as well. So if you want to pull in data from the likes of Guard Duty in AWS, Defender for Cloud, in order to correlate with vulnerable resources within the cloud. Identity analysis. This is a particularly useful part of the platform for inside CloudSec. And the reason being is you can look at an identity, the number of permissions that's been used over the last, say, 7, 30, 60, 90 days, and then remove automatically the permissions that were not used. So this helps you reduce the blast radius of a compromised account. We then have things like infrastructure as code, and then out-of-the-box compliance policies for inside CloudSec as well. The event-driven harvesting, which gives you that real-time visibility. So events for the cloud come into inside CloudSec within 2 to 3 minutes. So you'll be able to see, for instance, if someone has opened up an S3 bucket or blob storage to the public within 2 to 3 minutes. Or if someone's opened up SSH to the public, again, within 2 to 3 minutes. And then we have our extended cloud coverage. So if, sorry, let's go back. If they have Oracle Cloud or Ali Cloud, then they will also need Exposure Command Advanced. And then here you have that in a lot more detail.
Also, another question about licensing. It's very popular case when client have, for example, inside VM in first iteration, they buy, let's say, 500 inside VM. They use it for 1 to maybe 2 years, and then they extend it for whole his infrastructure. For example, they buy just for main office, for head office, and then they slowly purchase more to some side offices. In this case, as I understand, Surface Command not just based on our inside VM assets, what we covered. For example, can we buy inside VM for 500, but exposure command for example, 2000?
Okay, so the way the licensing works with Exposure Command is that we would, like you say, we would pull in information from data sources that would allow us to correlate across the environments. The main kind of question I get at the moment is, okay, inside VM has unlimited discovery, and it will scan the environment, discover unlimited assets, but vulnerability scanning is licensed. And so what the question I tend to get is, okay, we have, I don't know, 500 servers and workstations, but actually we have loads of cameras and IoT devices that we're going to discover and have information for across other information sources, but we don't want to do a vulnerability scan. Now, what the platform does in that instance is we have a machine learning program in the background of the platform itself that will classify assets. So if we look into assets here, under asset class, so we see here I've got workstation and server. These will be included as part of the assets. But actually, if you've got like an IoT asset or an IP phone, or let's say like a mobile phone, they won't be included towards your licensed asset count. So I hope that answers the question.
I think yes.
Perfect.
Also, from a licensing perspective, we have some customers that got Exposure Command to work with our solutions plus Surface Command to add the additional resources that they can get from other vendors. So the Exposure Command is a nice bundle on a commercial level. But then if you want to add, so for example, you want to add also the assets from CrowdStrike or Active Directory in general outside of Rapid7, then you can also add the Surface Command on top of Exposure Command just for those specific assets with the CrowdStrike and Active Directory. So Surface Command, it can come on its own and in the bundle at the same time, depending on the assets that you want to cover. Because, for example, with Exposure Command with SRVM, you're not going to cover all the assets that you may have with Active Directory rather than with CrowdStrike for whatever reason. Maybe you want to focus only on the servers and not on the endpoint. So maybe you can get Exposure Command to cover up to the certain amount of servers that you want to cover, and get Surface Command in parallel to cover also the assets with the CrowdStrike, maybe is covering all the endpoints.
Okay, understand. And I think popular case when, for example, people doing vulnerability scanning by Rapid7, covering it with inside VM, but in cloud they can use another solution, for example, Wiz or maybe Tenable or Qualys. And in that case, we need to calculate all assets in cloud and in on-premise, and then for this quantity, purchase Surface Command.
In that case, you have two options. The first one is you try to replace Wiz, and so you calculate everything under Exposure Command, or you keep Wiz, Tenable, or whatever, and so you calculate what insert VM is going to cover with Exposure Command. And in addition, you can get Surface Command to cover the cloud assets.
Okay.
So it's like, because we give, let's say you have 1,000, you buy 1,000 of Exposure Command, but maybe you have with the Wiz or Qualys or Tenable in the cloud, you have additional 500. So instead of buying 1,500 of Exposure Command, you would buy 1,000 Exposure Command plus 500 Surface Command.
Okay, it's clear.
In that case, you have a Surface Command with 2,000 total assets and Exposure Command limited to the scope of vulnerability management, AppSec, and so on. Any other question, guys? Wow, it was smooth. Nice and easy.